Welcome back, everybody. Ready to dive into something that can really make a difference?
Always up for that.
Good. Today, it's all about giving our mental health a boost,
Ooh, I like it.
but not in the way you might think.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
We're ditching those big dramatic overhauls.
Been there, done that.
Right. And instead, we're focusing on small, consistent actions.
Okay, I'm listening.
We're talking atomic habits, folks.
Atomic habits. Okay, so what's our source material for this deep dive?
Great question. We're taking inspiration from a YouTube video by Therapy in a Nutshell.
I've heard of that channel. It's hosted by a therapist, right?
That's right. She's all about making therapy accessible and practical.
Cool.
And in this video, she breaks down how these tiny daily actions can create a ripple effect in our well-being.
So, no more New Year's resolutions that we abandon by February.
Exactly. This is about building sustainable change.
I like the sound of that already.
And one of the things that really struck me was how she reframes our whole perspective on mental health.
Oh, how so?
Well, instead of seeing it as something you either have or don't have, she suggests viewing it on a spectrum.
A spectrum. I like that.
Right. It's not this black and white all or nothing situation.
So it's not about being perfectly cured, but rather about moving along that spectrum towards greater well-being.
Exactly. And what I love about this approach is that it empowers us to take control.
It takes away that feeling of helplessness that so many people experience when they're struggling.
Absolutely. Even small reductions in symptoms can drastically improve your overall well-being.
It's like turning down the volume on those negative feelings, even if you can't completely silence them.
Yes. And speaking of feeling overwhelmed, the therapist makes a really compelling point about why those huge, sweeping life changes often backfire.
Yeah, the I'm gonna change everything starting Monday approach.
Right. It's just too much at once.
It sets us up for failure almost before we even begin.
Exactly. It's like trying to climb Mount Everest without any training.
You're gonna get burned out and fast.
So instead, she suggests we take inspiration from the British cycling team.
The British cycling team. Okay, I'm not really a sports person, but go on.
Well, they were infamous for being underdogs.
Oh, yeah, I think I remember hearing about this.
And then they completely transformed their performance.
They did, didn't they? And ended up winning a ton of championships, right?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And their secret, they focused on improving everything by just 1% each day.
1%. That doesn't sound like much.
It doesn't, does it?
Mm.
But the math is pretty incredible.
Oh, lay it on me.
Okay, you ready for this? 1% better each day leads to being 37 times better over a year.
Whoa, okay, I was not expecting that.
Right, it's the power of compounding.
But I think it's not just about the math, is it?
What do you mean?
Well, think about the pressure that comes with trying to make these huge instant changes.
Oh yeah, it could be paralyzing.
But this 1% approach breaks down those goals into manageable steps.
So it feels less overwhelming, more achievable.
Exactly. And because you're more likely to succeed, you're also more likely to stay motivated.
It's that feeling of momentum that keeps you going.
It's like that saying, success breeds success.
And that momentum leads to what the therapist calls the snowball effect.
The snowball effect. I like it. Tell me more.
Well, imagine you're rolling a tiny snowball down a hill.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
As it rolls, it picks up more snow, getting bigger and bigger.
It gains momentum as it goes.
And eventually it turns into this unstoppable force.
So how does that apply to our habits?
Well, every small win we achieve builds upon the last one, creating this positive feedback loop.
So let's say I start by just taking my vitamins every day in January, like you said.
Right, and maybe that gives you a little boost of energy.
And feeling a bit more energetic, I decide to finally set that boundary at work in February, like not checking emails after hours.
Perfect. And then less stress leads to better sleep. And in March, you have the energy to add a 10-minute walk to your day.
Suddenly, I'm sleeping better, feeling more positive, and making healthier choices without any drastic overhauls.
It's amazing how these small actions can cascade into something so much bigger.
It's like those dominoes. You knock over the first one and the rest just fall into place.
Exactly. But now that we've got all these potential atomic habits swirling around, it's easy to feel like,
where do we even begin?
exactly, where do we even begin?
Well, that's where those 3 principles from the therapist come in, right? To help simplify the process.
Yes. She's got some brilliant advice for minimizing that feeling of overwhelm.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, her first principle is all about picking what she calls low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. So starting with the easiest habits.
Not necessarily the easiest, but the ones that feel most achievable within our current lifestyle and energy levels.
Okay, so not setting the bar too high right out of the gate.
Exactly. We want to set ourselves up for success.
But we don't want to make it too easy either, do we? There needs to be a little bit of a challenge to keep us engaged.
I like that. A bit of a stretch, as you said earlier.
So, low-hanging fruit, but with a touch of healthy stretch.
Okay, I like that. Now, what about her second principle?
That would be creating a system for consistency.
Yes. It's not just about willpower. It's about building in structures that support our goals.
Like setting reminders, prepping our environment, or even finding an accountability partner.
Exactly. Anything that makes it easier to stick with a new habit.
And her final principle is using a habit tracker.
Yes. To track our progress and stay motivated.
There's something powerful about visually seeing those streaks of success, isn't there?
It's incredibly motivating.
Yeah.
And it creates a sense of accountability.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork, we've got our principles in place. Are you ready to dive into some specific habits?
Absolutely. And trust me, you're going to find some really intriguing ones in this video.
Yeah.
Stuff that you can easily fit into even the busiest schedule.
Let's hear it. I'm all ears. Hit me with those atomic habits.
Well, one that really stood out to me was light therapy.
Light therapy, like just getting more sunlight.
Exactly. Spending even just 10 minutes a day in the sun can make a big difference.
And I think she also mentioned using a light box, right? For those of us who can't always get outside.
That's right. And it's especially helpful during the winter months when those days are shorter and we're not getting as much natural light.
Yeah, the winter blues are no joke.
Definitely not. But beyond just boosting our mood, light therapy can actually help regulate our circadian rhythms.
Our circadian, you mean our sleep-wake cycle?
Exactly. And it
Wow.
goes even deeper than that.
Really? How so?
Well, our circadian rhythms influence everything from our hormone levels to our metabolism to our cognitive function.
Wow. So just getting a bit more light can have a ripple effect on our entire system.
It really can. And speaking of systems, I know you're a big fan of incorporating more movement into our daily routines.
Oh, absolutely. You know me, always preaching the benefits of exercise.
Well, get this. The therapist talks about the power of micro workouts.
Micro workouts, what are those?
Basically, short bursts of activity throughout the day.
So we don't need to block out a full hour for the gym to reap the benefits.
Not at all. Think quick sets of squats while you're waiting for your coffee to brew or some lunges while you're on a phone call.
I love it. It's about making movement a part of our lifestyle, not just another item on our to-do list.
And she even suggests setting a timer to remind yourself to get up and move every hour.
Especially for those of us with desk jobs.
Yes. It's like a little reset button for your mind and body.
All right, count me in for those micro workouts. Now I'm curious to hear what she has to say about our digital lives.
Oh, she doesn't hold back. She talks about the importance of being mindful of what we consume online.
The digital detox, we all need a bit of that from time to time, right?
Totally. It's so easy to get sucked into that endless scroll of social media and news.
And it doesn't always leave us feeling our best, does it?
Definitely not. So the therapist suggests being intentional about who we follow and what we expose ourselves to.
Like unfollowing accounts that trigger negative emotions.
And seeking out accounts that inspire us or make us laugh.
It's about creating a digital environment that supports our well-being.
I love that. Curating our digital space, just like we curate our physical space.
Absolutely. And it's not just about what we consume, it's also about what we contribute.
Oh, right. She talks about the power of sharing positive content.
Like a beautiful photo or an inspiring quote.
Even just a simple message of gratitude can make a difference.
It's about shifting the energy online.
And speaking of gratitude, that's another one of her atomic habits for mental well-being.
I'm always up for a good dose of gratitude. What does she suggest?
Well, one practice she recommends is keeping a gratitude journal.
Ah, the classic gratitude journal.
Exactly. Taking a few minutes each day to write down things you're grateful for.
It's simple, but it really can shift your perspective.
And she also talks about incorporating gratitude into our daily conversations.
Oh, I like that. So not just thinking it, but actually expressing it.
Right, like thanking your barista for the coffee or telling your partner how much you appreciate them.
It's about making gratitude a part of our everyday interactions.
And it has this ripple effect, When we express gratitude, it not only brightens our own day, but also the day of the person we're expressing it to.
It's like a little dose of positivity spreading outwards.
Okay, so we've covered light therapy, micro workouts, digital detox, and gratitude practice.
That's a solid foundation already. What else is on her list of atomic habits?
Well, this next one might surprise you.
Okay, hit me with it.
She talks about the power of incorporating nature sounds into our daily routine.
Nature sounds like listening to bird song or ocean waves.
Exactly. It sounds simple, but there's actually a lot of research to back it up.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Well, certain nature sounds have been shown to have a calming and focusing effect on our brains.
That makes sense.
They can help reduce stress, improve sleep, and even boost our cognitive performance.
So it's like creating a little oasis of calm amidst the chaos of daily life.
Exactly. And you can easily incorporate this by playing nature sounds in the background while you're working, studying, or even just relaxing.
I'm going to try that. I'm always looking for ways to improve my focus.
And you don't need any fancy equipment or anything. There are tons of free apps and websites that offer a variety of nature sounds.
Perfect. All right, what about that last atomic habit on our list?
Well, this one is especially relevant for those of us who are constantly juggling multiple tasks.
Oh, you mean multitasking? Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that these days.
Definitely. But the therapist makes a compelling case for the power of single tasking.
Single tasking, so like focusing on one thing at a time.
Exactly. And I know it sounds counterintuitive in our fast-paced world, but there's a growing body of research that suggests multitasking actually makes us less productive.
I can see how that would be the case.
Our brains are simply not wired to effectively handle multiple complex tasks at once.
So when we try to do too many things at once, we end up doing none of them well.
Exactly. And it also leads to mental exhaustion and increased stress.
So how do we embrace this single tasking approach? It feels like everything in our society encourages us to do the opposite.
It's definitely a conscious effort, but it's worth it.
And like with any new habit, it's about starting small and building from there.
Right. The therapist suggests dedicating even just 15 minutes to a single task, free from distractions.
Like putting your phone on airplane mode, closing all those unnecessary tabs on your computer.
Creating that little bubble of focus.
And as we experience the benefits of single tasking, like increased productivity and reduced stress, we'll be more motivated to incorporate it into other areas of our lives.
It's about retraining our brains to focus on one thing at a time.
So we're not just checking things off our to-do list, we're actually engaging with the task at hand.
And that's where the real sense of accomplishment comes from.
Well said. Okay, so we've covered light therapy, micro workouts, nature sounds, and single tasking. Anything else on the atomic habit front?
Well, we can't talk about improving mental well-being without addressing those pesky negative thought patterns.
Yes, the inner critic.
One that's always ready to tell us we're not good enough, smart enough, or whatever enough.
Definitely not our best friend.
Definitely not. But the good news is, we can actually train our brains to think more positively.
Really? How do we do that?
The therapist talks about setting tiny rules for our thinking.
Tiny rules. I'm intrigued. Like what?
Well, one rule is to avoid calling ourselves names.
Okay, that's a good one.
We would never speak to a friend the way we sometimes speak to ourselves.
So true. It's about cultivating self-compassion.
Yes, treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to someone we love.
And I think that ties in with another one of her rules, right? The one about avoiding words like always and never.
Exactly. That black and white thinking can really trap us in negativity.
It's like we're putting ourselves in a box.
And the therapist encourages us to challenge those all-or-nothing thoughts with more nuanced language.
It's about embracing the shades of gray that exist in every situation.
And reminding ourselves that we're not defined by our mistakes or setbacks.
We're works in progress, always evolving and growing.
And speaking of growth, the therapist emphasizes the importance of embracing a growth mindset.
The growth mindset. One of my favorite concepts.
And she suggests a simple but powerful language tweak to help cultivate that mindset.
What is it?
Replacing the word failure with not yet.
Not yet. I love that. It completely reframes our perspective.
Instead of viewing setbacks as a sign that we're not good enough, we see them as opportunities for learning and growth.
It's a reminder that we're on a journey and there's always room for improvement.
And it's okay to make mistakes along the way, as long as we keep learning and growing.
So setbacks become stepping stones, not stumbling blocks.
Exactly. Now, one last tiny rule for our thinking that the therapist mentions is catching ourselves when we're catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing. You mean that tendency to jump to the worst case scenario?
Exactly. Our minds can be like little drama queens sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm a pro at catastrophizing.
But the therapist reminds us that most of those worst case scenarios never actually come true.
So it's about bringing our thoughts back to reality.
And instead of dwelling on those what ifs, we can focus on what we can actually control.
So if you find yourself spiraling into a catastrophic thought pattern, take a step back and ask yourself,
what's the most likely outcome here?
What can I do to address the situation?
What are some things that have gone well in the past?
It's about shifting from a mindset of fear and helplessness to a mindset of problem solving and agency.
And remember, this takes practice.
We're not going to become positivity gurus overnight.
But the more we consciously challenge those negative thoughts, the easier it becomes to cultivate a more balanced and optimistic outlook.
And that's a skill worth developing.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here. From light therapy to digital detox to cognitive reframing, we've explored a range of atomic habits that can truly transform our mental well-being.
It's inspiring to see how even these seemingly small actions can have such a profound impact.
And I think the key takeaway here is that we don't need to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect plan to start taking care of our mental health.
We can start right now, today, with just one small step.
And as we experience the positive effects of these atomic habits, we'll be motivated to continue building upon those wins, creating that snowball effect of positive change.
It's about progress, not perfection.
So, before we wrap up our deep dive into this incredible video, we've got a few listener questions that I thought would be great to address.
I'm all ears. I always love hearing from our listeners.
This first question comes from Sarah.
Okay, Sarah, what's on your mind?
She says, I love the idea of atomic habits, but I often get overwhelmed by choice. How do I pick just one habit to start with?
The paradox of choice. It can be paralyzing, can't it?
It really can. So how do we narrow it down without feeling like we're missing out?
Well, I think it's helpful to start by considering your current challenges and aspirations.
Like, what area of your life would you most like to improve right now?
Exactly. Is it your sleep, your energy levels, your focus, your relationships?
That brings a sense of purpose to the habit-choosing process.
Right. Instead of randomly picking a habit from a list, you're choosing one that's aligned with a specific goal you'd like to achieve.
So if Sarah's struggling with focus, for example, maybe she could start with that single tasking habit we discussed earlier.
Exactly. Or if she's feeling drained and low on energy, perhaps incorporating micro workouts or getting more sunlight could be a good starting point.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your current needs and aspirations intersect with a habit that feels manageable and maybe even a little bit exciting to try.
And remember, Sarah, there's no right or wrong answer.
Experiment. See what works for you.
The beauty of atomic habits is that you can adjust as needed.
If you try a habit for a week or two and it's not resonating, don't be afraid to switch to something else.
It's about finding what fits into your life and supports your well-being.
Okay, we've got another question here from David.
All right, David, what's your question?
He says, I struggle with consistency. I start habits with great enthusiasm, but then life gets in the way and I fall off track. Any advice?
The consistency struggle. I think we can all relate to that.
It's so common. Life is full of distractions and unexpected challenges.
But that doesn't mean we're doomed to fail.
So how do we navigate those inevitable disruptions and stay committed to our goals?
Well, remember what we talked about earlier, creating systems for consistency.
Right. It's about building in external structures that support our desired behaviors.
So instead of just saying, I'm going to meditate every day, you might set a specific time in your calendar, lay out your meditation cushion the night before, or even find an accountability partner.
Those little things can make a big difference.
It's about making the habit as automatic as possible so you're not relying solely on willpower.
Which we all know can be fickle.
And just as important as creating systems for consistency is being kind to ourselves when we inevitably stumble.
Because let's face it, we all fall off track sometimes.
Be part of the process.
So instead of beating yourself up, acknowledge the slip-up, learn from it, and get back on track as soon as you can.
It's about progress, not perfection.
And that brings us back to that growth mindset we were talking about earlier.
Right. Embracing the idea that we're always learning, always growing.
And setbacks are simply opportunities for course correction, not signs of failure.
It's about reframing our relationship with challenges.
So to all our listeners out there who are on this journey of improving their mental well-being, remember to be patient with yourselves, celebrate those small wins, and keep moving forward.
It's those tiny steps taken consistently that create the most lasting transformations.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
Exploring those fascinating ideas that can empower us to live richer, more fulfilling lives.
And we're so grateful to have you all along for the ride.
So until next time, keep diving deep and keep taking care of those amazing minds.
We'll be back with another deep dive soon. All right, we've got another question here from David.
Okay, David, let's hear it.
He says, I struggle with consistency. I start habits with great enthusiasm, but then life gets in the way and I fall off track. Any advice?
Consistency.
Yeah,
the age-old struggle, right?
It really is. It's like you set out with the best intentions and then,
bam, life throws a curveball.
exactly. So how do we navigate those inevitable disruptions and stay committed to our goals?
Well, remember what we were talking about earlier, creating systems for consistency.
Oh, right. Like setting ourselves up for success, not just relying on willpower.
Exactly. It's about building in those external structures that support our desired behaviors.
So instead of just saying, I'm going to meditate every day.
You might actually schedule it in your calendar.
Oh, yeah, like a real appointment with yourself.
Exactly. Or maybe you lay out your meditation cushion the night before so it's ready to go.
Or find an accountability partner to help you stay on track.
It's about making the habit as automatic as possible so you're not relying solely on willpower.
Which, as we all know, can be pretty fickle.
And just as important as creating those systems is being kind to ourselves when we inevitably stumble.
Because let's face it, we all fall off track sometime.
It happens. It's part of the process.
So instead of beating ourselves up, it's better to...
Acknowledge the slip up, learn from it, and get back on track as soon as you can.
It's about progress, not perfection, right?
100%. And you know what that reminds me of? That growth mindset we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I love that concept. It's like a total game changer.
It is. It's about embracing the idea that we're always learning, always growing.
And that setbacks are just opportunities for course correction.
Not signs of failure.
Exactly. They're just little nudges to help us adjust our approach.
And ultimately, they help us get closer to our goals.
So, to all our listeners out there who are on this journey of improving their mental well-being,
We see you, and we're cheering you on.
remember to be patient with yourselves, celebrate those small wins, and keep moving forward, one step at a time.
Because it's those tiny steps taken consistently that can lead to the most incredible transformations.
And that's really what this whole deep dive has been about.
Exploring these powerful yet often overlooked strategies for creating lasting change.
And not just change in our habits, but change in our mindset.
It's about cultivating a more positive, more resilient, more empowered way of being in the world.
And we're so grateful to have you all along for the journey.
It's inspiring to see so many people committed to personal growth and making mental well-being a priority.
And we can't wait to dive into more fascinating topics with you soon.
So, until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep taking care of those amazing minds.
We'll be back with another deep dive before you know it.